Okay, so you're a psychiatrist, but you're a nutritionist, which to me suggests that you're interested in the brain and the function of the brain, but you're also just as interested in the function of the gut. Mm-hmm. So we've typically separated those things in Western medicine. We tend to silo how we look at different systems and organ systems of the body. But obviously, you see the brain and the gut as connected, and science has started to prove that out. So can you elaborate a little bit on what's that bidirectional communication look like? What are the different highways, if you will, between the brain and the gut?
It's a great question, because part of it is that mental health is really evolving in the direction of helping us understand it's not an above the neck concept, and the ongoing research around the gut-brain connection has really helped us. Because the gut and brain originate from the exact same cell line in the human embryo, and the two organs grow, divide, and grow apart, but then are connected by the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, which is a two-way superhighway, allowing for, I like to tell people, kind of like teenagers text each other all the time. These two systems just are sending these text messages in the form of chemical messages.
I have three teenagers, by the way. And I have three teenagers, yes. By the way, so I'm very familiar with that metaphor. I knew you'd appreciate
that. So they continue like this all the time. It's bidirectional. So one organ to the other organ in both ways. But then you start to understand a little bit more about the gut, which is not only are these origins of these two organs the same, but 90 to 95% of serotonin, the happiness hormone, and the serotonin receptors are in the gut. And serotonin is also made there. It's one of the places it's made. So when you start to put these factors together, you realize that there has to be this food-mood connection when you think about the gut and brain. And then when you dive deeper, you realize there is that connection. And that is really one of the mechanisms that is front and center in nutritional psychiatry. There are other mechanisms still being researched, but it is something that I have seen clinically that makes sense.
Yeah, so there is an actual physical nerve.
Yes.
Where does that? Does it start kind of in the brainstem?
Yes, in the brainstem.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just because I'm not a doctor, so I'm kind of feeling my way through it.
Of course, yeah.
So I assume that up and down that nerve, there are electrical signals.
Yes.
That are connecting, that are making communications essentially between neurons, and so there's essentially communication coming up from the enteric nervous system.
Yes.
Through like neuropods and neurons in your gut that are sending signals to your brain. Like, for example, I think there's some neuropods in your gut that can sense sugar and send that little signal up to your brain, and there's probably some sort of dopamine reward system going on up there, which is saying, "Give me more of that." Yeah, right.
All of that.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, and the enteric nervous system. The reason that the gut is called the second brain is because the enteric nervous system is the largest body of nerves and neurons outside of the brain. So, and what it does is it wraps around the gut. And so exactly what you're describing is hugely important, because there are these real connections happening in real time between these organ systems and sending these very explicit chemical messages. And that's where the food that we eat as part of the digestive process, starts to interact with these messages. And one of the biggest things in mental health that has really also come forward is our understanding that conditions like depression, anxiety, and even cognitive disorders, focus, energy, are related in part to inflammation.
Yep.
And that inflammation gets set up in the gut also. One of the reasons is the food we eat.
Right.
It's not the only reason, but one of the reasons.
So are you referring to foods that might degrade the tight junctures of the epithelium, for example, and lead to intestinal permeability or leaky gut?
Over time,
and
yes.
Lipopolysaccharides and endotoxin entering the blood system. The immune system says, wait a minute, these shouldn't be here, sends out an inflammatory response, and we can get then into a cycle of chronic inflammation, and then that can spread to the brain.
That's exactly right. So the way that I speak about it is, the food that we eat is digested and in part is involved with the gut microbes. But The gut microbes are of many different types. We study the bacteria, but there are archaea, viruses, fungi, protozoa, many different types. And when our food products are digested, so say you had a healthy salad for lunch with a clean protein, lots of fiber, colorful vegetables, delicious foods, lots of spices, it breaks down. The breakdown products usually form short-chain fatty acids, and that's what we want to happen because they have a positive impact on the gut. They're protective of that gut lining, the single cell lining, and those tight junctions, which are important. Because it's a single cell lining, you want those tight junctions to be intact. But when we are eating, the sugar, the candy, the chocolates, not extra dark chocolate, but candy bars, and those types of foods, the breakdown products are actually toxic to the gut and to the gut lining, and they start to pierce those tight junctions. And it's exactly as you said, that's what starts to cause that leakiness and leads to bigger problems. And it also upsets the balance of the gut, so you get dysbiosis. Right. And I see an uptick of symptoms when people make sudden dietary changes, and a month later they're having more anxiety. It's pretty, it's very telling. Very telling.
Yeah, I've got to imagine in your line of work, you are seeing a tremendous correlation between kind of self-reported anxiety and depression and gut issues, dysbiosis and leaky gut.
That's correct. I often get referred individuals from gastroenterologists for medications, saying someone is super anxious. I think it's related to this condition that they have. I think they need a medication. And lo and behold, they walk into my office, and my virtual office these days, and I spend time unpacking the history and realize that, they've had a positive job change, gotten promoted, are now traveling more for work. So they're not eating home lunches. They're not packing food and snacks to take to the office because they're in airplanes, landing in different cities, going to networking events, drinking 2 glasses of wine a night, whereas in fact they were drinking 1 on the weekend with their friends when they went out for dinner. And the entire diet has changed because of lifestyle. Yeah. And it's not a negative thing in the lifestyle. It's actually a positive thing. The person is doing something better in their career, earning more money, and an uptick of symptoms. And it's not immediate. Although the microbes respond within 2 hours, the actual changes take time. So you don't see that inflammation set in immediately, but it starts to happen if you persist with that diet. And simple, in that individual and individuals like that, those dietary changes of just going back to the basics of what you were doing all the time before you had anxiety actually work for them.
So this could be an overabundance of high glycemic foods, for example, or too much alcohol. Could also be overprescription of broad spectrum antibiotics, or maybe too many proton pump inhibitors, or
all of the above.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this interview from the Commune Podcast, then click subscribe and check out this video right here.